Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm still your host, Zach Tidwell, and my guest this week is Mr. Christopher Willars, who some time ago was sentenced to 144 years behind bars. But as you will see today, he is no longer behind bars and has chosen to do something big with his second opportunity. And that is his story to tell, so I'm going to let him tell it. But before I do, just a couple of quick announcements. As usual, many of you know that there is a very powerful story behind this podcast. And if you want to know what that is, if you're new to the show, you can have it over to my website at zachtidwell.com and read a little bit about it there. Join my mailing list so that you can get updates and announcements and deals on two big projects that I have going on behind the scenes. And then finally, if you've been listening or watching for a while, either subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating and review wherever you're listening. That really helps the show grow. But I think that is all I have for you today. So, Mr. Christopher Willars, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I told you I kind of wanted to jump right into this. I think just so everyone has some context, what, how old were you and where were you at in life when you got sentenced to 144 years in prison?
Man, it's crazy you asked that question. I was having a conversation a little bit earlier with one of the guys I'm mentoring. Um, but I remember vividly, I was 19 years old. And looking back, I was probably the textbook definition of playing both sides of the fence. I was active duty United States Air Force, enlisted at 17, came out of basic training in E3, always had book smarts, but I was this angry teenager trying to figure out how to be a young adult, thinking that, I knew it all, had a chip on my shoulder. And one night I decided to, take my cousin's lead, and I still chose to get inside the truck that night and drive him. But I drove my cousin and a couple of his friends up the street. They stuck a place up with a, BB gun or whatnot. I never left the vehicle, never touched that, at all or anything, but I still ended up from that situation and circumstance being sentenced to 144 years in prison.
Did anyone get hurt that night?
It's now fast forward and somebody that facilitates different programs and works in gun intervention and all these different things. Yeah, people did get hurt that night. Mentally and emotionally, it would be easy for me to say, well, nobody got touched physically, and that's the truth. No physical harm was done, but definite some mental and emotional trauma that occurred from that situation. And anytime I have an opportunity to speak to that, because I never know who sees me and who doesn't, but I just always want to say I apologize. And I understand now as an older man, the part that I played in that and the trauma that still may exist.
No, I'm glad you said that's very, even when I asked that, I was asking surface level, like physical, and I dig in. And as soon as you said that, I was like, I feel like a dumbass for asking that question that way.
Well, no, man, it's a good one, though. It's a good question, man.
But I think the fact that you responded that way says a lot about you and how you've, as one would hope, have grown since then. And what were you doing in the Air Force?
Air Force, I was special and heavy equipment tech. So basically a
Okay.
diesel mechanic. But it was funny. I was actually going to be security forces, but I ended up getting a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt prior to basic and had to get a waiver and, all that stuff and ended up going in a different field. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Were you active duty?
I was active during duty during 9/11 as well, during that
Okay.
situation. Yeah. Yeah.
So was your cousin in as well, or were you just stationed near home?
No, so let me rephrase that. During the time of the incident, I had actually gotten in trouble and got a general discharge from the United States Air Force, which led me to leaving Minot Air Force Base, stopping briefly in Chicago, where I was from, and then landing in Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, where my mother had moved back to with the rest of her family. And this is where I would meet my older cousin, actually for the first time. Um, Not really have any type of support system, angry because I messed up my opportunity in the military. Yeah, a lot was going on in that moment.
All right. Before we which I could see. Minot sounds like such a shithole to be stationed in. Like I've met a couple people who I was in a Marine, so like we don't have bases
Yeah.
up there, but like we, I've met some airmen who have been up there. And it just sounds like it's hell, and it kind of,
It,
I'm not making excuses for you, but like it, there's some when you're twiddling your thumbs up there, like
yeah.
there's
I
a lot
got
of room.
I got diagnosed with depressive mood disorder, adjustment disorder when I was at minor. I don't know if it was the timing, life, pre-trauma, but yeah, it was a depressing environment. I went to basic in Lackland, like we all do in the Air Force, and then from there, I was in California, Port Hueneme Naval Base. I was on the coast enjoying life, and then when they were issuing everybody their bases, everybody's going to like Cali and Florida, staying in Cali, going to Florida here, and then everybody's laughing at me. And both times prior, in the military, I couldn't actually do the job that I wanted to do. And then I was going to a place I didn't want to go. And maybe it perpetuated some things that was going on with me at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, you got the green weenie, the classic.
Oh, man.
Plop
Yeah.
the boot up in my knot. But
Yeah.
with that, and I guess I'm curious, what did you get? What were the circumstances for the general discharge before we step back a little bit?
Yeah, I got a general discharge from the military. Is my first sergeant would say I was great on base, but horrible off base. Just getting into fights, honestly, getting in altercations, going to places, drinking, being in places that I was underage, at 18 at the time, but small town, I'm finding my way into bars and getting into, and your representation of the uniform, wherever you are. And I didn't take that, I didn't understand that. And I was actually given a few chances, because I had some bad conduct previous and I just didn't understand it. I didn't get it. And finally they said, you know what? You got to go. So, yeah.
Were you always getting into trouble growing up?
I wasn't always getting in trouble growing up. I I had two parents. I had a father and a mother, and they worked hard. And I guess we went through the typical middle class problems in that generation or whatnot. Eventually, parents got divorced, but dad was still present as much as he could. But by the time I turned about 14, dad wasn't around as much. Mom's working two jobs, and I'm starting to explore. And also, I had shifted from being somebody that was getting picked on in the neighborhood, like in middle school, to, having a fight or whatever. And I made a name for myself. And in high school, that period of going into freshman, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. So I was angry and explorative, and really, I didn't have the type of adults. And shout out to my mother and father, great people. My father passed now, but they didn't have eyes on me the way they, probably wanted to anyways. And yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like the combination of like that age, you're kind of coming into manhood a little bit, and now your dad's not around as much to
Yeah.
with the chip on the shoulder, like kind of sets up an environment that seems like it's supportive of getting into some things that maybe you shouldn't be. But I don't, I guess that kind of surprised me. Honestly, I expected you to be like, yeah, I grew up in a bad neighborhood, kind of, the cycles that we see kind of perpetuate, but
Yeah.
then that juxtaposed against the fact that you got out of there and all of it's through the Air Force. But it's not, because I go into these, I do a lot of research on people, but
Hmm.
I try and get enough of an understanding to ask the right questions without knowing the answers so that
Yeah.
it's not canned conversations. But
Hmm.
this is definitely not what I'd expected. So
Yeah.
when did you actually get kicked out? Were you 19 when you got kicked out of the Air Force?
I was 19. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was 19. And I just wanted to say, there's a whole generation. When you go into prisons now and you talk to a lot of these younger people, they came from the suburbs. They came from nice communities and gated communities and 3,000 square foot homes. And I don't know if I was the first generation of those kids that didn't have to, but just were attracted to that negative lifestyle in the streets.
Hmm.
But It continues on today. And then even with the Air Force, you're seeing young college kids, and I'm working with a young man right now who was destined to be in, Major League Baseball, was looked at, recruited, and one night, 30 seconds. So yeah, just wanted to chime in on that really quick because it's ongoing.
Yeah, and it's not the narratives that we expect, or even,
Right.
I guess, and you're not the first person I've seen. I just recently had Amy Ichikawa on here, and I don't know if you've heard of her. She's kind of big in this. In
Nice.
what's that?
No, I was saying nice. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in this space kind of in an adjacent way a little bit,
Mhm.
but and it was similar. Her dad was a sheriff's deputy, and that you're like, okay, that's not what I expected
Right.
either. So, but I've had guests on farther back that are kind of from the generation before that were more of that path that you would expect. But
Right.
I guess with all of that, I mean, sounds like some of it was kind of you testing your boundaries and finding your feet, whatever that was, up in Minot, and then you get kicked out. Like, was there, do you even remember at this point, like that, why the hard left turn into being a getaway driver for a robbery?
Yeah, well, the underlying precursor in a lot of the work that I do now that's tied to mental health and being an advocate in that space is I got diagnosed later on in life with type 1 bipolar, which is typically it onsets in childhood. So I was exposed to some trauma. I had lost a friend in first grade. We were crossing the street after playing street hockey. He dropped his mask, went back to get it. Car struck him right in front of us.
Oh,
Um, yeah, there was other things going on with the family. It wasn't, picture perfect by any means, but I think there was a lot of undiagnosed or a lot of unchecked trauma, things that maybe there should have been communication around. And I look back at my childhood now as a first-time father at 42, um, of a son, and I'm very present looking back. It's almost like I look back at those moments in my life outside in, um, and I didn't have the help that I needed, and it kind of built up. So I think me deciding to get into the truck that night with my cousin, I think it was a culmination. It was all right. I got kicked out the Air Force. I had got into a fight before then. My fiance and we ended that, and then here's this opportunity where because of the anger, because of whatever negative emotions were going on, my decision making process was nowhere, And I was 19, despite whatever I may have accomplished or been a part of, still 19.
yeah, and the male brain specifically is not really full. Your prefrontal cortex isn't fully
Yeah,
formed until you're 25. Like
yeah,
you're still very much so developing, and I guess I'm not aware of the delineation between the different types of bipolar. Do
Mhm.
you still get manic episodes and these big swings with type 1?
Yeah. I'm somebody, and I tell anybody, whatever you have to do for yourself, if you take medicine, take medicine. I was prescribed and told that I needed to be on medication to help stabilize my mood swings because they're so opposite of one another. And to this day, yeah, it's a very present part of my life. But I'm able to be successful going forward because I got a lot of good support. I got a recovery plan in place, and I'm very much aware of my mind, my body, and I do the things that I need to do. But to anybody that's out there that knows it's a battle, it's a struggle, and millions of Americans um, over here alone are just they're impacted by either type 1 or high level anxiety, any of these things. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's that stuff's real, man. I've been diagnosed with major depressive order and some other stuff downstream of traumatic brain injury, but like finding, I'm very big on this, is like, okay, once you have the thing, learning, learning what's out there for you in terms of resources, and also knowing, okay, if these are these symptoms or how these things start to present in me, knowing how to recognize that, like, okay, if this isn't going away, recognizing it, and like you've said, like you have plans and know how to adapt for it. So for you, I think it's valuable for people to hear. Like, obviously, it sounds like medication. You're probably working with a mental health professional too, but like, is exercise and diet a big part of this for you?
Yeah, I opted not uh to take medication just because of my lifestyle. I travel full time as a motivational speaker, and I don't know. Just not. It wasn't my pathway to recovery, but therapy is definitely a specific part of my plan. Support groups, but I'm a big nature guy. I got 3 dogs. I stay where the love is at. We're small, but I got a great family. Just great people around me. And I try to stay in healthy environments. Try to stay proactive. And the other part is I establish boundaries. Like I'm really good at separating the work from life or family life. I'm really good at putting distance between myself and, negative situations, etc. if needed. Um, and I've got the option in this season, so I don't make any excuses and I adjust where I need to because it was so severe after I came home from prison, which is really where I got impacted the most, where I didn't want to be here anymore, so I've got to do what I got to do, you know.
And we'll step into that here in a second. I'm got one more question on this. I'm just
For sure.
with bipolar, is it, you know, kind of cyclical and not necessarily predictable, or is it events will trigger a shift where you start to get that big swing, or how
That's
does
a
all
good
that
question.
work?
So I could say specifically, if you don't do certain things, you're probably going to be imbalanced to the point that you're going to go into an episode. So for anybody that's struggling with manic depressive disorder, type 1 bipolar, type 2, etc., if you're not doing the simple things like getting proper rest, if you're not eating properly, um, those two, which seem like regular things to us, could really shift you off track, right? But as far as the actual disease, it's predictable once you learn who you are with it. Early on, it was not predictable. I was easily triggered, and probably because a lot of times I was already in an episode, you know.
Mm.
Um, but now it's being aware, so it's not something that I could control. The episodes still come when they come. I'm great at communicating them to my wife. I wake up on a Tuesday and say, I think we're getting ready to go into an episode and be really transparent about that. And she'll ask me, hey, is this a fun one where you're going to be creative and energetic, like just the way we talk, or is this one where we got to take a breather? And I can feel it in my body, again, just because I stay really present and aware because of what I allowed not taking care of myself to do prior in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love hearing that, man. I mean, it's like anything else in life, you can figure out how to navigate these things. And it's hearing that from the sense of giving someone hope is, I think it's just important to get that out there. But
Yeah.
with this, you get wrapped up in this, and 144 years seems a little steep for, I mean, it sounds like the only thing that was actually on your criminal record was that seatbelt violation.
Yeah, yeah, no serious. Even when I was getting in trouble, while in the military, like there were never any criminal convictions or anything. Like it was bad conducts and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the only thing on my record. First time offender. Yeah.
So why such a steep penalty?
Well, one, my cousin and his friends, they were committing crimes outside of our crime. So they were already under investigation. There was some other stuff going on with things that they were doing outside of this. And being that I committed a crime in the season of this, whether it was just one or not, I became part of this enterprise because you're actively involved with them or not. You committed a crime with them within this time frame. And outside of that, I'm not the guy but our justice system, the way we sentence isn't fair. And there were opportunities and similar cases to mine at the time where individuals were able to go in and get the youthful offender program because they were younger than 21 for a robbery, driver, etc. But I would just say whether it's because of money, whether it's because one's got a public defender, whether it's one because one is Caucasian, whether I don't know what But I know that the county that I was in, when you look at the numbers and the statistics for the sentencing, for the cases similar to mine, they're all over the place. It's from the same judge, but there's no rhyme or reason to it, even with similar backgrounds.
And it is, correct me if I'm wrong here, when they actually decide the sentence, when he says 144 years, he's got a window that he can pick from. And other than that, it's just entirely up to his own subjective decision, right? Like the actual number.
So prior to if you catch a charge, you go and they do something called sentencing guidelines. And they do that through collective data attached to your case. They'll ask questions, whatever. It could be your age, it could be where you're from. Um, and these responses will, and your prior conviction record will dictate or determine where the judge can sentence you within guidelines. They can give you an excessive number like they did me, 144 years, but the time to do would still have to be within the guidelines. So my actual sentence was 144 years, all suspended, but 19. So I was given 19 years. Um, the crime itself, robbery, carries 5 to life. So I could have got a life sentence. Conspiracy, because we had a conversation, I agreed to get in a truck, that was 10 years. And what I would learn, regardless if you touch a firearm or not, it doesn't matter. You get stuck with that charge just like anyone else. Um, so I was given an automatic 3 years. And with the robbery, I want to say this to anybody that hopefully nobody's out there and living some type of life they shouldn't. But you don't get charged with a robbery for the building. You get charged with a separate robbery offense for each individual that's inside that building. So it could be one circumstance, one incident, but if there's 5 people standing there, you can get 5 robberies, 5 weapons charges, 5 conspiracies, and that's how everything gets elevated.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. There's someone in my family who was involved in something like this. Also the driver. I've never been able, it's not talked about in the family. I know it happened. I don't know any of the actual details of it, but something very similar. And I'd always wondered, like, you know, hearing this person's side of the story, but I never got any insight as to how all of this works. So
Yeah.
that's very interesting. But it kind of carries on that idea that you talked about of like, yeah, maybe no one got hands laid on them and nobody got shot, but like there is still a price of those actions on those people. So I can see where it does with that, but that is also, again, the fact that 144 years could be assigned to the guy in the car with nothing else on his record, like no other real like harmful acts on his record is tough. When you got that, when they sentenced you that day in the courtroom,
Hmm.
so were you aware it was going to be 19 years, or did you hear the 144 years?
So first thing was my public defender pushed the sentencing date up on me. I was given the opportunity, I'll backtrack a little bit. The first day that I turned myself in because everybody else had been arrested, they came to my grandmother's looking for me. I decided to turn myself in. I didn't want to put my family under any pressure. They gave me an opportunity to go home that night by dinner time. All I had to do was roll over on the guys, my cousin, his friends. I turned down the opportunity. During that time, 2003, again, I was 19, but it was also during that big no snitch movement, and the rappers had the shirts out. It was a whole bunch of, this is what you're taught. Um, so I decided not to. So here I am in a situation where typically 95+% of individuals that face a criminal conviction here in the United States are given a plea. I was given none because I refused to take the offer and testify. So my pathway to getting sentenced was either plead guilty and throw myself to the mercy of the judge or try to take it to trial against a jury. In my circumstance in the Commonwealth, the only way I could have got home was to go in front of the judge. So he pushed my court date up 2 months prior. I'm arguing with the officers. I'm saying I'm not supposed to go to court today. They're saying, no, you're on the docket. You got to go. I get down there. He walks into the bullpen where I'm at, and he says, "You're getting sentenced today. The best I can get you is 35 to 54 years to do." This is what he says to me. Okay. Right. This right. So I'm looking at him and I'm doing the math and I'm like, okay, I'm 19. I'm getting ready to turn 20. I'm gonna be 50. If not, I'm not gonna be alive. That's just how I see it. And Lord willing, I live to 100. But back then, whatever. And I did what probably 95% of young people don't do in a court of law that know that they can and don't know that they can. I told my lawyer, no, I'm not doing that. I don't know what it was in me, but I'm grateful I did it. But he got aggravated. He looks back at me. He says, "Well, if you're not going to take that, what am I supposed to tell him?" I said, "I don't know, but I can't do 35 to 54 years. There's no parole or nothing here." And he says, "Well, I'm going to walk off for 2 minutes and I'm going to come back. That'll give you enough time to figure out what you want me to tell him." So at 19, right, at 19 years old, the most important decision of my life would entail trying to figure out how much time, how many years from my life I could offer the judge and the courts to make them happy, and how many years I thought that I could survive in prison and make it home to my family. So he walked out. I prayed. I thought about it, and I was paying attention to how other guys were getting sentenced. And I just said, man, I'm trying to be home before I'm 40. Like, I just want to, and that sounds crazy to people who have never been in my situation, but they were giving life sentences out for the crime that I had. And I knew if I could make it home in my 30s, I could still start a family. I could still have some type of life.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I told him that. He walked out there. He spoke to the prosecutor or whatever, and they did what they did. And my mother got on the stand and said her son deserved a second chance. I got up there and held myself accountable. And next thing you knew, the judge was yelling down years or passing down years, but he started off with that 144, and I blanked out for a second. I didn't hear the suspension of time initially.
Yeah, I don't know how you could. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's traumatic.
34 to 54 or whatever you had said right in that ballpark was
It's a lot going on,
all
man.
alone is like, holy shit, my life is over. Especially
Yeah,
like you said, you get 54 at 19 years old, like you are on death's door according to average life
yeah,
expectancy in America at that point. Oh,
yeah. And again, and like he said, I understand. I expected to be punished. People ask me, no, I agree that I should have been punished, right? But first time offender, 35, 54 years, it exposes our justice system. And this is why I'm an advocate in the courts, etc., and everything else. So, yeah.
yeah, that's freaking wild. So, and I mean, you went to prison, right?
Yeah, I went to prison, level 4. Yeah. Yeah.
What was that like?
Prison turned me into a monster. I don't, present day, for all that I do, I never glorify the negativity. I seldom speak about who I became in there. Most of my message is about how to survive and live after that environment. But I was extremely angry. I was 20 years old and I was sent to a level 4 yard. Level 4, over 70% of the individuals up there would have life sentences. And my first day there, I would step over a body. The environment and what happens to a young man in prison is it's detrimental because many of us that go in there at that age, we get turned into things that we weren't in the first place.
But you have to survive.
You have to survive. And my story in a snapshot is I went in there with somebody that wasn't affiliated, had maybe 2 tattoos from the military, to figuring out I could exercise some intelligence, manipulate the environment, to becoming affiliated, to running a yard, to what the heck? How did this happen? But this is what's going on in prisons all across the country where it should be about rehabilitation. Individuals are being placed in there. There's no rehabilitation. They're being turned into monsters. They're being turned into soldiers or whatever they have to do in order to survive prison in the moment.
Well, and that was actually, Amy. Hitch earlier, basically, she did 5 years in prison. She was in a women's prison in California. And during that time, they started letting, that's when men, fully intact men who were not taking any steps to actually transition in any sort of way could I self-identify as being transgendered be transferred into women's prisons. And she talked specifically about like there is a distinct cultural difference in a women's prison versus a men's prison. She talked about
Absolutely.
how that like those dynamics very quickly started transferring over into women's prisons where it no they basically the way that she talked about it, she was like, yeah, it is almost like a, these little nested family groups where there's,
Hmm.
maternal figure and kind of these women are grouping together. There's no separations across racial lines when it's just
Right.
women, and that starts to totally shift. The violence, the
Oh,
rape, all of it. And as soon as there's men introduced, and like you mentioned getting affiliated, did you have to affiliate with a gang in there, like along racial lines?
yeah. In Virginia, it's not about race.
Oh.
That's one thing I'll say. Yeah, it's not about race in there. But it's still separated, right? Like it's still cities, it's still cliques, it's still cars, it's still all that. I got affiliated just basically off strategy, off knowing that I had X amount of years. And I got into a physical altercation really early, like the third day I was there. And I didn't win, but I got my respect. Some guys jumped me. And from there, once I had the respect and guys got to know me, the best way I could tell you is in prison, the gangs, the cliques, the car, it's almost like they try to draft you, right? And if you're somebody that can help get money, or you are getting money, or you got influence on the yard, or you know how to talk to the COs to get them to do stuff, they gonna try to, get you in. For me, it was strategy, it was boredom, it was me being 21. But what would happen for the next 9 years while I was behind that wall, I would become fully immersed in gang culture and all this lifestyle that leads you nowhere, that destroys you, and all that's around it. But it gave me the ability to reach the young people today. I guess I suffered for not to glamorize the lessons that I learned, but it did give me an ability to speak a language to people that need to have conversations with.
Yeah. And I'll come back to that. But
Hmm.
I think that is a huge byproduct of perspective, like being on the other side of it. And that's a
Yeah,
choice. That's another thing. Perspective is always a choice. Like
yeah,
you choose how to look back upon things or even, look at things in the present. You can't control what happens to you and you can't control how you feel, but you can choose how you look at it. But with, you talking about some of the violence, is I guess on one hand, are you prepared to go to war every day in there? And
every day.
is there a distinction, like an unspoken distinction of today is at risk of weapons versus fists, or is that just always like you mentioned you getting jumped by those guys, like seems almost like an initial test, but
Yeah.
is there something that sets those two types of, I guess, the fights or fights versus stabbings versus cuttings and slashings apart?
Yeah. So there's a food chain in prison. And if you're on the low end of the food chain, which means you're probably not with anybody, but you're not necessarily preparing to like go to war, but you potentially could get victimized that day, etc. Right? Which is never good. But if the higher you are up on the food chain, the more you probably are involved with the prison culture, what's going on inside it, how it's moving. And it's no secret that it's the prisoners that run the prison. Like the guards, they can lock the doors, they can open them, but as far as what goes on the inside, that's the prisoners. Um, every day though, especially certain camps, you're not prepared just to have altercation with your hands. You're prepared to defend your life because in an environment like that, you have to expect it to go there, no matter what. And I'm gonna tell you something. When people ask me what is some of the moments that changed my life forever, it would be the first time I was locked in a cell and another dude was attacking me. You know, there's no help. There's no man's land, and you're gonna have to do what you got to do in order to keep standing on your feet and make it home to your mother, whoever's out there waiting for you. So, yeah.
It's just, so, I mean, it's terrifying. Obviously, here, I think everyone thinks that's terrifying. I mean, that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking. It's like a morbid curiosity, but
It's very terrifying. I don't know. I know, but I'm telling you, years later, I've been home close to 6 years now. I feel like a totally different human being, and I don't know if this version of myself would be able to survive what I went through. But I guess I would because I am that person. But I was a totally different human being then, and I had to
yeah.
be.
You said you're 42 now,
42 now. Yeah, I'm twice the age now. So
so you did like 17 years.
I did. I was locked up February 12th, 2003 to January 13th, 2020. I came home right before the pandemic started. Yeah, I've had a great journey, man.
That's a
I've had a great
great way to
life.
put it. Yeah. Welcome to the shit show that the world has turned into
Man,
since you went in.
man, the conversations I've had with God. But hey, yeah, that's my journey. It's been a ride.
Did you ever spend any time in solitary?
I spent over 3 years in solitary confinement combined.
Consecutive? Oh, okay, combined.
Yeah, longest consecutive period in solitary was over 14 months. Yeah.
For what?
I was put on an investigation. Um, depending on where you're at in the food chain or what you're into, the investigators they have a point system, especially if you're part of a clique, etc. Car. Um, and my points were so elevated that if something would happen on one prison, even though I wasn't housed there, they would automatically assume that I would be the reason of the catalyst that or the person that made the decision, and I would be moved from Sussex or excuse me, Haynesville Correctional Center, solitary confinement, back to Sussex too, a second time to solitary confinement, and they held me back there. I lost 55 pounds and yeah, some other stuff.
Holy hell, man. I mean, how do you not go insane? Because do you, at that point, do you even get an hour outside or is it literally in your cell 24 hours a day?
You get an hour outside your cell 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if they're not short on staff, if they can do it. I was on something called two-man escort, which meant anywhere I was at, and they followed me from the jail, but anytime I was on a solitary restrictive housing, anything like that, anywhere I'd have to go, there'd be two officers, which is not uncommon if you're in that situation. But you would be asked basically to kneel down in front of your door with your back to the door, hands behind you. They would cuff you and they would clip a dog leash to the cuffs and they would walk you to the shower, unclip the dog leash. You put your hands through the tray slot, they unlock you, and then you take your shower. Then they cuff you again, dog leash, and they walk you to this. We call them the dog kennels. I got 3 dogs. The place that they can play is bigger, and it basically they're cages that are right. They're cages that are big enough to stand up in, and that's it.
What?
That's it. You can do burpees or push-ups, but you're inside a cage, a ceilinged cage. On top of that, it's so traumatizing, man. Like I tell these young kids and older people that's playing around in these streets, like it's not the obvious things that we think about in prison. It's the things that you don't think about that you're gonna be exposed to that take you out.
I don't know, man. I think about that solitary thing. It just,
It's vicious.
whew. Again, I don't know how you keep your wits about it. Especially let's say say you go out Wednesday, you don't get to go out Friday because they're short staffed, and the next day you get to go out on Monday. Like,
Oh yeah,
no concept of
holidays.
time.
No, you try to mark time off the tray slot. The trays coming through the slots, but I'm gonna tell you a couple things also about solitary. vindictive correctional officers. Not all. There's some cool correctional officers that I'm cool with to this day. We have conversations, we chill. But there's some that were completely ruthless, and they made it a point to say things like, I wouldn't eat that food because we're going to do something to it. So it's not just being down there. It's now you may be starving when this shift is on for the next 3 days. Um, it's also my first 3 days, 72 hours of incarceration was in solitary confinement in a place called Yellow Brick Road at Rappahannock Regional Jail, where multiple souls have been lost. My first 72 hours in solitary confinement, I listened to a man overnight scream and scream and scream until it got quieter and quieter. And by the time they checked on him, he was no longer with us because he was detoxing um, from a substance that he was partaking or whatnot. They thought that he was just trying to make noise and whatever, and he didn't make it home to his family. And this is somebody that didn't even have a serious charge. He got pulled over on a DUI. So
Oh, geez.
solitary is it's vicious. I know individuals that went back there. I had a buddy of mine, he walked down more than half his sentence, had a girl, made money, did tattoo. Like he was like a guy, like a stand-up guy, did his time, and he went to solitary, and evidently he decided that'd be the last place he'd be. So yeah, it takes you out. There's a lot of things going on now where they say you can't be housed back there for that long of a period of time, and all that. So yeah.
Mm. It's just, fuck, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what's more terrifying about that. The potentially getting raped by somebody, the worrying about at any second you're going to get into a fucking knife fight or losing your mind in that place.
Yeah, then you got the other door where you start going to solitary confinement so you can get peace of mind from the chaos that's in general population. I used to go to solitary to get sleep. And that says a lot because that's where I was at mentally when you find solace and peace in something that abnormal. But,
Something's wrong. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I've talked about it on here before. We've kind of touched on it here. I know you said it. I don't think I've said, like, yes, that I'm a firm believer in, like, you not, I'm okay with people not being comfortable in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the fact that there's no rehabilitation in the sense of, like, and I think that is probably a byproduct of the fact that there is an industry behind prisons. Not all prisons are private facilities, but at least in those facilities, like, there's some incentive to have the revolving door going there and not
Yeah.
to rehabilitate.
Yeah, it makes no sense to rehabilitate individuals that you need to fill the beds. And I would say prison is supposed to be prison. But for anybody out there that says these guys should only be punished, 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 most individuals in prison come home, and you should want them rehabilitated before they come home for a multitude of different reasons, because many of them will be in your communities or in communities around your loved ones, etc. So prison can't just be about punishment. It can't always be cold, cruel, and harsh, especially when you look at things like the European models, where recidivism goes down more and more every year, and people are educated and given mental health support, and all that. So it's deep, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's one of those very complex issues where it's easy to say, like, yeah, we need to take the money out of it and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it's there's so
Yeah.
many layers to it.
I won't hold my breath. I won't. Yeah, for-profit prisons and lobbying, two of the things that have definitely shifted things in this country.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing Amy was talking about, that and I guess curious to know if this was a thing. So she was housed in California.
Yeah.
Can't remember if she said it was a federal facility, but every prisoner there was outfitted with Narcan.
Oh yeah, I hadn't seen that. We had other issues though. We had what was it, they called it spice? That was the issue. Um that came in. But I would say now somebody that travels and goes inside different systems, depending on where you are in the country, there's there's always going to be a substance use issue that's off this, like people don't hear about every day, but it varies depending upon the part of the country you're in.
Yeah. Well, and my point there was more so the fact that, like, instead of addressing the drug problem, someone's making a lot of money off of giving every prisoner Narcan.
Yeah.
You know, like with you were talking about the lobbying and everything. So it's
Yeah.
just,
No, no, yeah, yeah.
boom. So, you end up serving your time, and that was all like, that wasn't a surprise that you got out when you got out because he had suspended some of
Hmm.
that 144-year, overarching
Yeah.
time frame. But when you got out, I know it's out, you're married and have a kid now, but was that
Hmm.
the case when you got out?
I got married while I was in prison. Shout out to my wife that I don't know how I convinced her. We met on some nonprofit work because I was actually doing some community work from the inside out, running a nonprofit with a buddy of mine. It was pretty successful. So I came home with a wife. I came home to a home, a mortgage, a vehicle, support system. I had a lot of the things that my counterparts do not have. I'm very aware of that. And that was part of the reason why I went so hard to make sure I was successful and didn't squander that.
Mhm.
But I came home right before the pandemic. My level of PTSD was, you could have put me in the encyclopedia next to the definition of it. There's a video of me walking out of prison where I'm twitching in the face and all my family's happy and celebratory, and I'm looking like we're on front lines of some war and I'm trying to get them home to safety. Um, and there was just a lot of things going on those first 2 years, man. Mental health, I was almost not able to be here to have this conversation. So, yeah.
Was it, I mean, we've kind of, there's the getting over the being on guard all the time and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I shot myself in the face 6.5 years ago. So I'm curious to hear, like,
Yeah.
what outside of that, the hypervigilance, all of the stuff that you would
Yeah.
typically see with like post-traumatic stress disorder. What else? What I mean, because it's, again, not what I expected. You expect, okay, I came out of prison and I couldn't find housing, I couldn't get a job, but you had some, like, at
Right.
least, like, you already said some things that a lot of your peers don't coming out of prison.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what else was going on there?
You touched on one element, being a severe stage of fight or flight, racing thoughts, feeling like I couldn't escape my own mind, not knowing how to quiet that. Sitting there sometimes with the family trying to watch a movie, they're all laughing and trying to figure out if I need to be admitted because the thoughts are just going and I can't control them. I suffer from extreme levels of paranoia, which I'm sure is from being in that environment, seeing certain things, etc. But depression. Um, when I came home, the realities of being gone for 17 years, the realities of losing my father, my grandmother, my younger brother that took his life, who took similar path to me, not prison, but United States Air Force, was even on my knot, where he actually ended up taking his life. Um, there was a multitude of different things that hit me. And then when I came home, me and my wife went through some personal tragedies. We were trying to start a family, and a lot of people can relate to what I'm saying with miscarriages, and I just didn't have the mental health support. And again, it was the culmination, it was the buildup, and to double down on what you said. I also walked into being a successful entrepreneur. We opened up a school, a vocational school. We were in the news. I was principal of the year as a convicted felon. Um, I externally, I was operating on high levels. I came home, I was being this voice, but internally, I was messed up. I was done. And I didn't get the help that I needed because I came home trying to help everyone else. I was trying to
Keep
fill
up that
voids.
face.
Yeah, man, I knew in the most humble of ways. I knew even with my family in my situation, I had matured and I knew I was going to be like the leader of our family, somebody, because my father was gone. Um, and I knew I could be a leader in the community. I knew I could do certain things, be a speaker, but I underestimated like the fact that you have to help you. You have to make sure you're okay. Like you could have all these talents, abilities, support. If you're not okay on the inside, none of that means nothing. And I think that's what it was, man. And then one day, I wrote two letters and I was ready, and thank God. And maybe I wasn't ready. I sometimes sit there, but I know I was to that place, and luckily my mother called for no apparent reason or whatever it was, if it was God, I don't know. But it was enough to get my attention. And then my wife walked back into the house, had to double back for something she forgot, and I broke down, and that was kind of the start, the start of the healing and getting back to me and trying to feel human again, and you know finding out who I was as a free person now, and somebody that went in at 19 and is now 36 years of age.
Were you scared you were gonna fuck it up?
Oh yeah, I was super paranoid. They call me the law-abiding citizen out here.
What?
Because I'm like the party poop. I don't do nothing. Like, I won't even jaywalk. I remember, to be right. Like, I don't do nothing. And there's always, it's not as bad now, right? But initially, when I came home, like, I wouldn't want nobody to drive with me. Like, I was super paranoid because I had this time looming over my head. Even though I made it home, that suspended time is still there,
Mhm.
right? And I'm off probation now. I've got a passport. I traveled. I got a proclamation. All these it means something, but it means nothing because I still have this thing that's over me. You know,
What does the proclamation mean?
I got the key to the city. I got my own.
What?
Yeah, I got my own day. My nonprofit, the Life Unit Inc. We got our own day, June 23rd, my birthday. Just for the work that we do here nationally, and yeah, it's a blessing. Yeah.
And that's what the life unit.
Yeah, Life Unit Inc. That's my nonprofit. We focus on reentry intervention and recovery work. Yeah.
Okay. Is that what the vocational school was through, or was that something separate? Because you mentioned having something going on with one of the guys that you were in with too.
Yeah, no, the vocational school's totally separate. I got my barber's license while I was on the inside, trying to impress the woman that's now my wife, who was all right. Trying to show her that I could be productive, and she was already a master college cosmetology instructor with a reputation of helping a lot of students pass state board. And I just asked her, I was like, what do you want to do? Like, what's your dream? Prior to me coming home, she told me she wanted a school. It took me about 2 years to, just work hard, hustle, saving, not spending money. Of course, her with me doing the same things. We got to school. And then I remember when we were opening, she was like, you're going to be the principal. I was like, I'm going to be the what? Executive director, what we called it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do that. I'm a convicted felon and I'm a man. This is a cosmetology school. She was like, but she's like, you're my husband. You lead us in life and household. You got it. And I thank God for her because it was a struggle, a lot of hard lessons, but we graduated over 200 students, no student left behind. Um, and it was a learning process. It was a growing process, and it helped me become human and be a part of community again and all that. So
Man,
yeah.
I've been trying to figure out how I can get my barber's license, but I keep
Yeah.
fucking everybody's hair up. So I didn't feel like I need to go to you since you
That's
don't
how you
leave
get
anyone
it.
behind.
That's how you get it right there. You gotta mess some heads up, man.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. And if you don't want to talk about this, because I mean, it's like more into your personal life, like
Hmm.
tell me and we'll skip it. But I just like, can you speak more to how you guys wound up meeting? I mean, was this all virtual?
I was There's a couple things were going on. We knew about each other a year prior to us speaking. I was what they called a senior elder, which was a lead mentor in the reentry program while incarcerated. It was a unique situation. And I always got to shout out Miss Jessica Lee and all these people in Department of Corrections because they created this position for myself and a buddy of mine. And we were able to be the go-betweens for the individuals getting ready to go home with 6 months or less and the counselors. We were able to bring in, request different organizations, resources, all that, facilitate pro bono. So a buddy of mine came to a program that I was having. The loved ones were able to come in, the family members, and his wife seen me speak. And she was like, I have somebody that you need to meet. And I told her no because I had just stopped dating somebody for 6 years. I was in a relationship with a former um, staff member at the prison. And
Oh, that seems like a gray area.
yeah, it'd be very, very unique grade. I've had a unique journey and experience behind
Yeah.
football. Yeah. And she told me about her. We do, and then eventually we got on the phone. And it was a 20-minute phone call. 20-minute prison phone call. We introduced ourselves, and then by the end of the call, she asked if she could pray for me. And when we hung up, I knew she was gonna be my wife. That's the short version.
Man. And she's out there doing her thing as a master cosmetology instructor.
Yeah, yeah. And
Uh-huh.
she had a reputation, yeah, yeah, for helping students, and we went that direction. Yeah.
That's interesting. So, like you're doing a lot of speaking. What other, you talked about reentry stuff. I know you also work with at risk, or at least I, I, I know there's some work done along the lines of at risk youth. Like, how is all of that kind of coming to fruition today with Life Unit?
Yeah, a multitude of different ways. We do a lot of work in the digital space. Anytime we can partner, collaborate with already existing programs to teach things like conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, effective communication, things we feel like young people need to de-escalate situations that a lot of time lead into prison or the grave. We do that. We do a lot of in-person. I'm traveling full time. I typically travel up to 2 weeks out the month. Just working, getting into different prisons, juvenile detention facilities, recovery centers, schools. Um, work with we work with anyone from Westminster, which is like top of the top. I consider one of those schools for K through 12, or that leads to some of these Ivy League schools. And we work with youth in Compton, California. But we're very proactive, and our flights are sponsored, as we always tell people. So we can move around pretty easy, and we're grateful to do the work. Um, and then I leverage into the digital space through social media, where my platform of storytelling and speaking about mental health, prison incarceration reaches about 100 million people every month. So
Whoa.
yeah, we
That's freaking crazy, dude.
yeah.
That's got to be bigger than like a traditional news outlet.
Yeah, I see the power in social media. Like I understand the power of having 400,000 followers on, FB I get it. At first I didn't want to get involved in the internet, and I didn't tell my story. I was actually telling the story of my brother, trying to get him home, and then family started reaching out, and then I was encouraged to start telling my story, and it took off, and it's changed things drastically. It social media is what enables me to help people without having to charge anybody. I don't have to get a grant or do any of these things, and it's very beneficial to reach the youth as well. So I'm grateful.
I mean, any time that pre-show communications are handled through someone's assistant, I assume there's some serious momentum behind what they're doing. But dear God, that's
Yeah.
freaking crazy.
Working, man.
That's cool, man. That's super cool.
Thank you.
In terms of people coming out of prisons,
Mm.
I would imagine finding work is one of the biggest challenges. But like, can you paint that picture, I guess, just of the maybe some more of the big things that you wouldn't expect coming out of the stuff that people are the type of uphill battle people are kind of looking at coming out, especially a felon.
Yeah. There's a few obstacles. Employment is always an obstacle because, there's an expectation you got to pay your bills. The problem a lot of times with individuals coming home from incarceration and getting employment is they don't have transportation. And if there's not a bus line, and so transportation is another issue. Um, Another thing that we spoke on that I always want to shine light to that's priority is mental health support. Too many individuals are not getting mental health support, and within 3 years, 60% typically, give or take, go right back. I believe this is one of the main things. Addiction support. If for a lot of our brothers and sisters and juveniles that are behind the wall prior to their incarceration, they were struggling with substance use disorder. So I always recommend that. But one of the biggest obstacles that we don't often think about, or maybe we do, is the people that we're attached to. And sometimes it's the people in our life that are like meaning no harm at whatsoever that can lead us down the wrong path because they haven't lived our experience. So it's really important to be around people that are cognizant of the fact that you did X amount of time in prison, that you probably have anxiety, that you got, XYZ going on, but these are just some of the obstacles, you know. So, yeah,
Is your cousin and the other accomplices, are they still in prison?
they are. Yeah,
Okay.
because
Are
it's that brutal.
they for are they gonna be in there for life?
My cousin is going to be in there for life, unfortunately. One of my co-defendants has a chance of getting home. But even with that, I don't know how many other charges he had in the other states, and that's just from what I can see. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Have you ever had a conversation with either of them?
I ran into one of my co-defendants on a level 4 yard, the individual that um, testified on me. He was,
Against you.
yeah, he was the main reason that I would end up, I wouldn't say the main reason because I made the decision, but he was the reason that law enforcement knew about me. When he got taken into custody, he made sure, they knew about me, and I ended up running into him on a level 4 yard, um, ready to do some bad stuff, honestly, because I was waiting for that moment at that time. And the only thing that really saved us, because it was definitely a us thing, was when I did confront him because I caught him off guard when I turned him around on the boulevard and he saw me. Uh, there was nothing but fear there, and I could also see that somebody that had been starving with no support. He was just doing really bad. And I actually had a change of heart before I left that camp. I never put him out there in front of everybody. Um, Made sure he had a job before I left. Made sure his box was filled with food. Made sure he had clothes because I mean it's bad in there, and some people probably look at me like I'm crazy and say there's no way in heck, but I don't know, man. My heart was never. I was never a bad person. Like that's not the core of me. I just sometimes because of prison or whatever, I had to do some bad things, but I'm glad I seen what I saw and I didn't, act, in
That's at
another
least
way.
growth. Again, like you grew as a man.
Yeah, I think so, man. I grew a lot in there, honestly.
Is that, I mean, you talked on losing 55 pounds while you were in solitary, but with if he was out in Gen Pop, I guess this could be a conversation down two lines. In general, is not getting enough food an issue? Or like with him, he said, like him seeing that or seeing that
Yeah.
he was starving. Is that from other people taking your shit?
Yeah, in his situation, I believe it was. Um, he didn't have that. I got him moved into the block with me. But I believe that so, but malnutrition is definitely a thing in prison. The food that they do issue, it's not enough. One meal isn't enough to feed a man during that port. I feel like it's enough. They give you enough of whatever, but the issue is a lot of time what's prepared on the tray is dirty, it's contaminated, there's something wrong, and you can't eat that. It's not prepared correctly, so your calorie intake is even less than that. And everybody doesn't have support and commissary money. Everybody doesn't have a mom or dad or somebody sending them, X amount of dollars every week. So it's a very big problem in there. I also want to say that there's people in there that are homeless in prison where they do not even have a cell, because maybe they're that low on the totem pole, and depending upon the system, if it's somewhere like Georgia, they sleep on a mat on the floor in the middle of the pod. Very unsafe. Not that a cell is safer, but yeah, there's a bunch of issues with poverty within prison, believe it or not. Yeah.
Is that because basically their cellmate has forced them out of their cell, or there's not enough space in the prison and they're the low man on the totem pole?
Cellmate definitely forced them out the cell. And
Whoa.
yeah, and sometimes individuals are forced out of cells because of their habits, right? You- And I'm not saying that it's right, but if you're gonna be going into episodes off of a substance and going left, yeah, you probably can't stay here, and they're not gonna move you, so we're gonna have to figure something out because I don't want nothing to happen to me. I don't want to do nothing to you. So it's those things, but it's also just unfortunately, um, prison is very predatorial. And if you don't stand up for yourself, if you don't cross that line every now and then, unfortunately, in most cases, because I know some people that have never been in a physical altercation ever, years behind a wall. Um, but in most cases, man, you're either going to be, you know, a hunter or you're going to be hunted, and it just is what it is.
We're still primates, and
Oh
that
yeah,
is like it seems to be the epitome of still showing that is you get nothing but men behind bar. It just fuck, man, it is so scary. It just
it is.
yeah. Do you do any work in the legislative side in terms of trying to drive change in shifting more towards or getting some sort of actual rehabilitative efforts in these places?
Yeah, proud to be a part of the Virginia Coalition where we've been able to implement or help implement a whole bunch of change. A lot of formerly incarcerated led organizations are doing a lot of great work behind the scenes, connecting the dots with legislators, getting new laws put into place, and thousands of individuals are coming home faster to their second chance in Virginia. Down here in Georgia, working specifically on parole reform, prison conditions. There's a lot of safety issues down here in Georgia, and I'm one of those people. I want people to be safe, bottom line. And then I'm fortunate enough to work with organizations like White Men for Racial Justice, League for Safer Streets up in Vermont, um, where we're getting ready to go into, testify in front of the General Assembly and get some work done up there for the men and women that are incarcerated there. So I go wherever I'm able to be a voice, and I take pride in it. I'm grateful that I'm asked to do this in different spaces and states, especially on that level. I'm grateful.
Okay. What about in terms of, getting like educational opportunities and stuff in there where again, because the idea and whether people agree with the or fall into that thinking that you pointed out earlier where it should be punishment, punishment, punishment. And even if
Mhm.
they can't agree with the fact that, hey, these people are still going back to families, what you would think someone that doesn't necessarily have the or see the upside on the more human side. Like at the end of the day, the taxpayer is paying to keep people in there. And so when they keep going back, that again is you paying for them to be in there again for another prolonged sentence. So, if you're getting people more prepared to be productive members of the society where they're putting money into the system instead of pulling from it, that should be something everyone can get behind. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what changes are being made there, if any?
Um, there isn't.
Okay.
There isn't. You catch glimpses, right? Like there's one of the prisons I visited in Maine. You do have individuals that are making probably upward of $90,000 a year. They're in a prison with no fence around it. They get to go into the community and work. They don't mind working 12, 16 hours a day because they're locked up. They save all their money. They send it home. They buy houses, whatever. That's a unique situation. That's like less than 1% of the prison system. And even when it comes to just making money or being able to work prior to release, that's cool, but it's still, there's so much missing in the mental health support piece. So one of the things that I'm actively lobbying for and trying to get legislators involved with is a bill which will help bridge the gap between when an individual is getting ready to go home to his release. So I'm asking for mental health support for incarcerated individuals 6 months prior to their release to 6 months out. Um, that can be, performed or supported by these positions that they've created throughout the country called certified peer specialists, which are formerly incarcerated people that work professionally in the mental health space. And there's thousands of us. I'm one of them as well. So I'm always, that's the biggest thing. I'm running around like a madman anywhere I can go, all 50 states. I'll go to across the world if we can bring back attention here. That mental health support piece is what's needed in our communities and prior to individuals coming home if we really want to see change with the numbers.
Yeah, I think in think in Amy's case in that prison, it was like one provider to 3,000 inmates,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
means it's a provider to no inmates because you're not doing anything there, which is,
Right.
it's just, yeah, again, and you already touched on it. Like those issues have to be treated. Otherwise, like that stuff will bubble up again, which
Yeah.
again, I think it's a fine line with some stuff. I guess that's not even a fine line. Like with the information I have on what you just mentioned about people working basically living full-time lives in the community except for sleeping in the prison at night, I feel like that seems a little laxed. Again, with the very
Poses
sort
other
of,
issues.
yeah. Hmm.
It
But
poses other issues.
yeah, but I don't know. So you can still find some middle ground there between the two extremes with at least like opportunities and stuff. And it's cool that you've turned it around, man. I mean, you spent basically half of your life up to the time that you were released
Yeah.
in there and have come out doing some important works around that have all been derived from your own experiences. And that is about as much as you can ask for in terms of someone turning something around. So I commend you for that. And
Thank you.
I think it's awesome and you should be proud. I feel like you probably are, but I would hope you are.
Proud and tired, but
Yeah.
ready to roll.
Oh, you said you have a newborn, right?
Yeah. First
Yeah.
time dad. He's 2 months. 2 months old,
Jeez.
and I got a little boy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, man, it's a blessing, man. It changed everything, but for the better for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, where can everyone find you?
Man, you could just punch my name in the search bar, Christopher Willars. If you want to be really specific, you can just look up Christopher Life Willars. And that's really it, man. You find me on in any search bar you look in. I'm grateful for that. I've been working. There's a good digital footprint. Will make it easy for you. And I do want to just mention that when you find me, it's more than just the content. You'll see where you can get connected to a digital reentry community where you or your loved one can get support. I'm proud to say that I'm an author. I released 2 books last year in 2025 that are helping people impacted by incarceration and helping people understand the impact of incarceration. So let's get connected. And I hope you guys love the content, but more important than that, I would love for you guys to get connected with the support that we're providing to help people across the globe.
If 100 million people are checking in with you every month, there's a good chance people you're listening are already aware of where you're at. But just in case they aren't, your last name is Willars, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You got anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap this up?
Man, just thank you again for having me up here, man. I learned a little bit about your story, powerful testimony, and to provide a platform like this is great. And to anybody watching this, just know whatever situation you're in, like whatever situation you're in, no matter how bad it is, how matter how dark it is, there is a place where you can dig yourself out. There's a place where you can fight your way through. It will not be easy, but it'll be worth it. And the good news is it's in our toughest moments where we learn the lessons that we need in order to go forward.
Yeah.
It's a twisted part of life, but it's so necessary, and when we know that, we become powerful in those moments that are meant to destroy us. So I see y'all, man.
Yeah. Drill into that, whatever that situation is that you're in, and find the thing that you can control and start to control it. Again, that small, getting some momentum in one facet will like slowly start to build and roll over into other things. And at some level, you do have control, whether that is just on how you're thinking about things. If you can do it, like that, it will change things. So thank you again for coming on, man. That was a beautiful way to tie things up.
Thank you for having me, man.
And thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. I think I'm gonna just let that sink in for you instead of adding my own words to it here at the end like I normally do. And I will see you next week. Be sure to share this around with another curious mind who needs to hear it. As always, thank you.